Honorable ambassadors, distinguished guests, dear academics, researchers, and participants, a very warm welcome to the Forum Promoting Maritime Security in the Red Sea, Gulfs of Aden and Oman. We are delighted and honored to have you with us today. The Red Sea and the surrounding waters have long been among the world's most strategically vital maritime corridors. In recent years, escalating tensions, non-state actor threats, and competing regional interests have placed this region at the very heart of global security debates. Today, we bring together leading voices from across the region and beyond to seek common ground and explore creative solutions for lasting maritime security. Our program will unfold across 3 panel sessions and a closed workshop covering a broad range of perspectives, from a legal framework and regional cooperation mechanism to CBRN threats and autonomous systems. Before we begin our opening speeches, I would like to share a brief announcement. Unfortunately, SETA Foundation General Coordinator Nebi Mish is unable to join us today. In his place, it is our pleasure to welcome Professor Yücel Acer, who will deliver the opening remarks on behalf of SETA Foundation. Please join me.
Dear ambassadors, dear friends and guests, and ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of SETA, I would like to welcome all of you to SETA first of all. Then you are also very welcome to Ankara and Türkiye. We are truly pleased for hosting this timely and important symposium here in Ankara, the headquarters of SETA. As SETA, it's a great pleasure for us to organize and host this conference in cooperation with the Arab Center for Security Studies on the highly important contemporary issue of freedom of passage and security in international straits, particularly and recently in the Strait of Hormuz and Red Sea. Although international straits are quite narrow water passages, they are geographically limited, but they possess immense global significance. We witnessed this very clearly during the armed conflicts in our region, especially in the context of Strait of Hormuz. The mere inability to ensure safe passages through the Strait of Hormuz and its closure to international commercial transport negatively affected not only our region, but also every corner of the world. International straits connect continents, support international trade, facilitate energy transport and energy transportation, and promote communication and cooperation among nations. International straits are vital arteries of the global economy. Every day, countless vessels carrying food, medicine, energy resources, and commercial goods pass through these routes. And disruption to free passage can affect not only neighboring states, but also stability of the entire international system. The principle of freedom of navigation has long been one of the cornerstones of international law. From the ideas first advanced by Hugo Grotius to the modern framework established on international maritime law, the international community has recognized that the seas must remain open for peaceful use of by all states. At the same time, we acknowledge the legitimate concerns of coastal states regarding security, environmental protection, and sovereignty. Therefore, the challenge we face is not choosing between freedom and security, but rather maintaining a fair balance between the right of passage and the responsibilities of states bordering these strategic waterways. This conference provides us with an opportunity to strengthen dialogue, encourage cooperation, and reaffirm our commitment to international law. In a world increasingly shaped by geographical tensions and maritime disputes, and respect for legal norms and the peaceful resolution of differences are more necessary than ever. Let us work together to ensure that international straits remain zones of peace, stability, cooperation, and lawful navigation for persons and the future generations. In the concluding remarks, I have to thank many friends here for contributing to this international conference. You probably know that we will have a closed session afternoon, and we will have even deeper discussions about this very significant issue. Thank you very much for coming. I hope this is an enjoyable and fruitful conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opening remarks, Yücel Hocam. We will now hear from our second speaker, who will deliver the opening remarks on behalf of our Maritime Security Group. Please welcome Mr. Ayman Khalil.
Thank you, Madam, for this introduction. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wa bihi nasta'in wa salatu wassalam ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, distinguished participants, it's a great pleasure to be here in Ankara. And what better place to debate and dialogue here but in SETA. A few months ago, I called my good friend Dr. Ager and discussed the opportunity of having a joint conference in Ankara. Of course, subject area was critical. The nationalities of some participants were also considered as restricted in many countries in the Middle East. And of course, the overall prevailing situation in the region were basically important obstacles. Dr. Ager took the challenge, and I'm happy that we are here today in Ankara discussing critical issues in a critical juncture of time. And I dare say that this is an important meeting, a creative meeting that the very fact that we have Turkish and Arabs and Iranians, Americans and Europeans under one roof, and that is the SETA roof, is a breakthrough achievement. I'm sorry, I cannot see, so I have to put the lights on. Right. Participants in this meeting comes from varying backgrounds, and they represent different schools of thoughts. Despite these differences, participants in this meeting, particularly participants from the Middle East, shares one common feature, and that is, namely, we were all casualties of this recent conflict. Needless to say that this was a conflict that was unjustifiable, an American-Israeli attack against a sovereign country, which is Iran. But on the other hand, the Iranian response, which was disproportionate to our friends and brothers in the Gulf region, was also non-justified. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here today to discuss as responsible intellectuals to discuss means of promoting maritime security in a troubled region. Indeed, a proper understanding of maritime security would pave the way for a possible regional security architecture and leading the way for a non-aggression pact, hopefully in the near future. Hence, the meeting today will be addressing creative concepts, including the requirements for a safe maritime zone in the Red Sea and Gulfs of Aden and Oman, and the potential of a regional council for maritime risks. All of these are basically requirements for a non-aggression pact and hopefully a regional security structure. The implementation of this project has been somewhat challenging as a Jordanian organization struggling against regional circumstances. Yet, with each challenge comes an opportunity, and I am happy to say that the opportunity was there for both Jordan and Turkey. The recent announcement of establishing a joint railway system connecting Syria, Turkey, and Jordan provides a very important breakthrough. His Majesty's meeting recently with the Sheikh Tamim of Qatar and MBS of Saudi Arabia has basically paved the way to such a system. This system would facilitate the bypassing of the closure of Hormuz and Bab and Mandeb, God forbid. But if it happens, this system will bypass this obstacle and hopefully providing a non-interrupted supply of products, goods, and commodities to our friends in the Gulf region, but also vice versa. Finally, I have to stress that this meeting would not have been possible without the support of Norway. Ambassador Garder, on behalf of participants in this meeting, we sincerely thank Norway for its kind and support and engagement. Thank you so much, and pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Khalil, for your valuable contributions. I'm now pleased to invite our third speaker to the podium. Please welcome His Excellency Andreas Gardner, Ambassador of Norway to Turkey.
Esteemed Yücel Acar and esteemed Ayman Khalil, Excellencies, distinguished members of the Maritime Security Group, esteemed colleagues and participants, Sabah al-Khair and Günaydın. It is from my side both a privilege and an honor to address you today. I would also like to extend a warm welcome on behalf of the Norwegian Embassy in Amman, as our colleagues were unfortunately unable to join us in person. Nevertheless, I am delighted to be here among you and to take part in what I am sure will be a meaningful and timely discussion on the future of the region, and more specifically, on maritime security. Norway takes great pride in its cooperation with the Arab Institute of Security Studies, a trusted partner with a deep understanding of the complex and interconnected security challenges facing the Middle East. We are proud to support the Maritime Security Group, launched 2 years ago in Cairo. And given the current regional escalation, this initiative is more relevant and necessary than ever. Norway fully supports the group's core objectives, i.e., to stabilize the maritime situation, to build confidence, and to contribute to de-escalation through dialogue, cooperation, and coordination, thereby enhancing the prospects for peace and stability across the region. The regional escalation and the disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz have clearly demonstrated the immense global consequences when one of the world's most critical maritime choke points is affected by conflict. The repercussions are severe and far-reaching, impacting energy prices, global supply chains, and food security, and ultimately the lives of millions of people worldwide. At the same time, these developments have reinforced an important lesson. The many conflicts and tragedies unfolding simultaneously across the Middle East cannot be resolved by force of arms, but must be addressed through negotiations and diplomacy. And this is exactly what the Maritime Security Group aims to achieve through cross-border cooperation, capacity building, and coordination. A stable Middle East, including security in the maritime domain, is not only vital for our own security, our own future, but also holds global significance. As a maritime nation, a solution to the regional escalation and the quick reopening of the Strait of Hormuz to safe transit passage in line with the law of the sea is also in Norway's strong interest. In fact, Norway has one of the largest merchant fleets in the world. Free and safe passage for civilian ships is of critical importance to us. Under normal circumstances, approximately 40 Norwegian-operated ships are present in this region at any given time. It is therefore firmly in our interest to promote regional maritime security and stability, not only in and around the Strait of Hormuz, but also across the wider interconnected maritime areas, including the Gulfs of Aden and Oman and the Red Sea. Drawing on our own experience from the Nordic region, we have seen firsthand how sustained regional cooperation can foster significant benefits in trade, security, and prosperity, laying a strong foundation for peace in our part of the world. Historically, the wider Middle East has been a vital crossroads for maritime trade, illustrating the significant potential of regional integration, expanded markets, oil and gas exports, and economies of scale. And to fully realize these opportunities, however, it is essential to address the diverse and persistent security challenges facing the region today. Achieving lasting stability will require cooperation among both regional and international actors, not only on military matters, but also through the development of comprehensive political strategies, dialogue, and respect for international law. Thank you all for your presence here today and your commitment to this important cause. I wish you a day of fruitful discussions and very much look forward to learning of the outcomes of this forum. Shukran ve teşekkürler.
Okay, good morning again. This is going to be our opening session after the opening speeches. Before we start, I have to underline a significant point to my mind. I think it was like 3 months ago, we discussed with Ayman to organize a symposium on maritime security. And it was before war on Iran. So it seems to me like a quite visionary approach. You know, after Iran war, we have witnessed clearly that how significant the passages through international straits and maritime navigation are important for all countries, not only the regional countries. So that's why we emphasize today throughout the sessions that this is a very timely conference and very, very timely and fruitful discussions, I am sure. So in the opening session, we have very distinguished participants, and we will start Ambassador Burak Özügergin. He's a Director General from Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Türkiye. So let me say a couple of words about his CV. Started his diplomatic career in 1985, and he also served as an attaché at the Department of International Economic Relations, and later became an attaché in the Office of Minister of Foreign Affairs. In 1989, Ambassador Özügergin was appointed Second Secretary at the Turkish Embassy in London, and subsequently served as a multiple capacities in Benghazi, at the United Nations, and in Washington. In 2000, he headed the Department of Maritime Affairs. Between 2008 and 2010, he served as the head of the Information Department and Foreign Ministry spokesperson. From 2010 onwards, Ambassador Özügergin held ambassadorial positions in key capitals, including Croatia and Greece. Ambassador Özügergin, please.
Thank you, Professor, and thank you for the invitation. Now, I was asked to speak about maritime security, which I will. Before I do that, imagine for a moment a world without oceans and seas. If we consider that by volume, over 80% of global trade moves through oceans and seas, the energy that keeps us warm in the winter and chilled in the summer, and even the internet that we constantly have in our hands, rely on shipping, on pipelines, on cables that lay on the seabed. So going without the uses that the oceans and seas provide is not an option. Otherwise, we'd be living in a world of detachment, disengagement, and even darkness. So maritime security, then, is like a shield that protects global goods and services. But maritime security, as our friend, the Norwegian ambassador said, is not just a military concern. It's the fundamental requirement for a functioning modern world. Maritime security ensures that the sea remains a highway for commerce and connectivity, saving us from disarray and chaos. So I put it to you that even if you were a landlocked country, maritime security would still be crucial for you. It's the silent guardian, in other words, of our collective way of life. And it's the bridge, really, between national sovereignty and global prosperity. The way we see it, there are three primary challenges to maritime security that we face today. First is the traditional state-level issues and threats. You know, this is the manifestation of the classic geopolitics at sea. you know, the establishment of maritime zones, maritime jurisdiction zones, the disputes that go with that, the territorial disputes, etc., and maintaining the freedom of navigation. It's a state affair, especially in strategic choke points, which I'm sure you'll be talking about in depth in these sessions today. Second, non-state threats. These are the outlaws of the oceans. Piracy in the Horn of Africa, maritime terrorism, the dark networks of human trafficking and narcotics, smuggling. These threats exploit the vastness of the oceans to do their business in the shadows. Third, so you have state, non-state. Third, and this is increasingly relevant for all of us, whether you're a coastal state or a landlocked state, environmental and resource threats. Therefore, achieving maritime security these days includes our response to climate change, such as protecting coastal infrastructure from rising tide, preventing ecological disasters from oil spills, fighting against illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing. This has to do with maritime security also. So how to secure an area that covers 70% of the planet? We in Ankara think that the answer lies not only deploying more ships, more cables, more pipelines, yes, of course, but also aiming at more cooperation. Because no single nation, no matter how powerful its navy, cannot police the oceans alone. Modern maritime security relies on information sharing. It's about maritime domain awareness. You know, using satellites, radar, even artificial intelligence comes into the picture. As for Turkey's place in all of this, just a brief look at the map would tell you that we're sitting not only at the convergence of land masses, of continents, but we also sit where several bodies of waters come together. Yes, Turkey is defined by its peninsular reality. You have the Thracian Peninsula and the Anatolian Peninsula. But then we are enveloped by the sea, Black Sea, Aegean Sea, Mediterranean, with the Sea of Marmara in between the two peninsulas. Our coastline is about 11,000 kilometers. And we rank 10th in the world in terms of merchant fleets, tonnage, 53 or something million tons. And I mentioned that the world trade, around 80% of the world trade moves through the oceans. For us, it's 90%. So we are at a higher average in terms of our relationship with trade and the sea. We're involved in almost every dimension of the maritime industry: shipbuilding, ship repair, ship recycling, ship and port operations, training of seafarers, ship classification, marine insurance, maritime logistics, you name it. The straits, the Turkish straits, they're not just nice to look at. They're among the world's most crucial maritime choke points. And for almost a century now, the 1936 Montreux Convention has served as the basis, as the legal basis for the regime of passage through the Strait of Çanakkale, Sea of Marmara, and the Strait of Istanbul. So for us, it's more than just a treaty. It's a guarantee of regional order and stability. really. If you think about it, the Black Sea, you know, we had World War II in the meantime. The Black Sea and the Ukraine war, etc. The Black Sea has not turned into a bloodbath because of the delicate balance that the Montreal Convention provides and our implementation of it. Having said that, the recent attacks in the Black Sea on vessels and port facilities, especially the housing energy facilities, this is very concerning for us. Many of these attacks have taken place in our either EEZ or search and rescue region. They're not exactly the same. Or they've taken places where, because of the currents, if something awful happens, we would be the ones who suffer because of the way that the Black Sea currents work. So such attacks are unacceptable, absolutely unacceptable, regardless of the party that carries out the attacks and regardless of the motive that is behind the attacks. Also, in order to address the threat posed by drifting mines we're still in the Black Sea, we launched the trilateral initiative with Romania, Bulgaria, and Romania, the MCM Black. You may have heard of it. You will also remember the grain deal a couple of years ago. The grain deal, it morphed into something else later on, but it provided the conceptual and operational principles that are at work even today, after the morphed version of the grain deal. So all in all, I can safely say that our prosperity, our energy independence, our connection with the world actually depends on the health of the sea and the proper functioning of sea lanes, of cables, of pipelines around us and beyond. And speaking of beyond, the Strait of Hormuz, Malacca Strait, the Red Sea, Gulfs of Aden and Oman, are, of course, critical waterways for global commerce and energy, like it was mentioned. As the recent weeks have demonstrated, challenges to the security of strategic maritime routes can quickly affect global trade and energy markets. Try buying a plane ticket that you generally know the price of, the cost of these days, and it's going to get worse. So we've been actively participating in joint operations conducted by the international community against maritime piracy. Maritime piracy was there before the attack on Iran. Why? These are, you know, the coast of Somalia, Horn of Africa, and all these places were not connected to it. They're not immediately off our shores, but because the interconnected nature of maritime security obliges us to look beyond our immediate shores. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but our Navy has participated in NATO Operation Ocean Shield. We're a founding member of the contact group of piracy off the coast of Somalia. Mm-hmm. Our parliament has just extended the mandate of the Turkish naval forces to combat piracy and armed robbery and terrorism in the Gulf of Aden, then off the coast of Somalia, Arabian Sea. So we're there. We've also been providing technical assistance training programs for the Somalian Navy and Coast Guard so that they can increase their capacity to combat these ills. There's an old saying in diplomacy, if you're not at the table, you're at the menu. If we carry that maxim to the domain of maritime security, then one could say that if you're not in the water, you're not at the table. Yes. So that's why, maritime strategy is pretty much as strong as the hardware that backs it up. This is the real world. In the last decade, this country has undergone a naval revolution. We've moved from being an importer of defense technologies to being a global innovator. Many of you will have heard of the transformation generally of our military industry. I'll leave that for now because you'll remember at the beginning of my remarks, I said maritime security is not just about vessels and missiles and drones. It's about human endeavor. And here I'd like to mention the services of the Turkish Coast Guard, because generally, or often, I will say, around our shores, often it is the men and women of our Coast Guard services that are the first responders in humanitarian tragedies. And we have a lot of humanitarian tragedies, unfortunately, around us. So these people, they personify the balance. You spoke of a balance. The balance between hard security and the compassionate face of the state. You need that balance. Yes. We're also moving towards a green revolution because you cannot speak of a blue economy without a green revolution. But that's a totally huge subject on its own. I'll just say that we'll be hosting one of the biggest events of the year in the environmental calendar, the COP31 on climate change in Antalya next November. That will follow the NATO summit in July in Ankara. So we'll be busy both ways, the civilian and the military aspect of maritime security. So in closing, our view on maritime security can be summarized through the principle of stability, through strength and dialogue. Stability through strength and dialogue. And let me say this last word before I end. This is very important for people to understand. On the one hand, we do not seek expansion as Türkiye. On the other hand, we will not accept exclusion. This is very important. Neither expansion nor exclusion. This is true not only for maritime security, but for almost everything around Turkey. So in this spirit, we always extend a hand of cooperation to all who respect international law, the principles of good neighborliness and equity, and especially those who conduct themselves with a minimum level of common sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you, Ambassador Özgergin. I know Ambassador personally for many years, and he's extensively involved in maritime issues, and he's actually serving as a Director General of Southeastern Mediterranean Sea. So whatever you say is quite valuable, and I have to emphasize that any kind of security structure should involve the maritime security. Otherwise, it would be not strong enough. And unfortunately, there are many threats to maritime security. Ambassador Özgergin enumerated them. But since we are talking about regional security at the moment, in the sense of maritime security as an integral part, unfortunately, we have participants and speakers from countries in our region and beyond. And one of them is going to be our second speaker, Mr. Khaled Batarfi. He is from Al Faisal University, Saudi Arabia. He has done his MA in Library and Information Science, King Abdulaziz University. He earned his PhD in Journalism and Mass Communication, University of Oregon in the United States in 1999, worked for Saudi and international media, and professor at Al Faisal University, Prince Sultan College, business in Jeddah, a political analyst, writes for Al Madima Daily and appears in a number of Arab satellite channels, published 20 books in Arabic, and biographies, short stories, novels, and translated Shahib Isahim Nazar's The Power of the Third Kind to Arabic, awarded King Abdulaziz Foundation Award for the Pioneers of Oral History, 2003. Prince Bandar bin Sultan Award for Academic Excellence in 1999 and Society of American Journalism Award in 1998. Please, floor is yours.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today I would like to discuss Saudi Arabia's stance on regional security in the Middle East and how the kingdom envisions a more stable and cooperative regional order. The Middle East has long been one of the most strategically vital and politically volatile regions in the world. It's home to nearly half of the world's proven oil reserves, some of the world's most important maritime routes, including the Islamic Gulf, call it Persian or Arabic, I call it Islamic, the Red Sea, and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. And it sits at the crossroads of Asia, Africa, and Europe. Yet, despite its strategic importance, the region has suffered from decades of wars, proxy conflicts, terrorism, sectarian tensions, and foreign interventions. Saudi Arabia's view today is increasingly clear. Regional security can no longer depend solely on military deterrence. It must be based on development, diplomacy, mutual respect, and collective responsibility. First, the Saudi concept of regional security. Saudi Arabia's security doctrine is built on 5 pillars. Number 1, sovereignty and non-interference. The kingdom believes that respecting state sovereignty is fundamental. No regional order can survive if countries interfere in each other's domestic affairs through militias, ideological expansion, or destabilization campaigns. Saudi Arabia consistently calls for respect for borders, non-interference in internal affairs, and the strengthening of legitimate national institutions. This principle is central in Saudi position on Yemen, Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq. Collective security, that's number 2. Saudi Arabia believes that no single country can secure the region alone. Security must be collective and institutional. This explains the Kingdom's active role in Gulf Cooperation Council cooperation, Arab and Islamic coalitions, and international maritime security initiatives. The Kingdom seeks stronger coordination in intelligence sharing, counterterrorism, cyber defense, and maritime protection. Number 3, development as a security tool. Saudi Arabia sees economic prosperity as a pillar of peace. Vision 2030 is not merely an economic reform plan, it is also a strategic security project. How? We have projects such as NEOM, the Red Sea Project, and regional logistics corridors, create interdependence and reduce incentives for conflict. The Saudi approach links security plus development plus investment plus regional integration as one strategic package. Number 4, diplomacy before escalation. Saudi Arabia increasingly uses diplomacy to prevent wars, and examples are plenty, and they include restoring ties with Iran through Chinese mediation, effort to calm tensions in Sudan, initiatives in Yemen, and mediation efforts in Gaza and Lebanon. The Kingdom strategy is pragmatic. De-escalations where possible, deterrence where necessary. Number 5, international partnership without dependency. Saudi Arabia values strategic partnerships with United States, China, Russia, France, Brazil, and others. But today, Saudi foreign policy is more independent and diversified. The Kingdom seeks balanced relations based on interest, not ideological alignment. Second, key security priorities for Saudi Arabia. Number 1, maritime security. Saudi Arabia views maritime security as critical. The Kingdom western coast overlooks the Red Sea, and the eastern coast faces the Islamic Gulf. Threats to shipping in Bab el-Mandab Strait or the Strait of Hormuz directly impact global trade and energy markets. Saudi Arabia supports freedom of navigation, anti-piracy operations, and regional maritime cooperation. Number 2, counter-terrorism and extremism. Saudi Arabia has been a major target of terrorism and a leading force against it. The Kingdom has invested heavily in Global Center for Combating Extremist Ideology, I'tidal, and international intelligence cooperation. Its strategy includes military action, ideological confrontation, and digital monitoring. Number 3, the Palestinian issue. Saudi Arabia sees the Palestinian issue as central to regional peace. The Kingdom continues to advocate for a ceasefire in Gaza, humanitarian access, reconstruction, and a political path toward a Palestinian state. Saudi Arabia believes no lasting regional security architecture can succeed without a just solution to the Palestinian issue. Number 4, stability in Yemen. Saudi Arabia seeks a stable Yemen, not perpetual conflict. Its priorities are ending the war, securing the borders, preventing terrorism, and protecting Red Sea shipping routes. Third, challenges to regional security. Saudi Arabia recognizes serious ongoing threats: proxy wars, weak states and militia, sectarian mobilization, cyber warfare, energy insecurity, and external power competition. In addition, new challenges include AI-enabled warfare, drone and missile proliferation, and attacks on infrastructures. Fourth, the Saudi vision for the future. Saudi Arabia's long-term vision is for a Middle East based on from confrontation to cooperation, from ideology to interest, from conflict economies to development economies, from fragile states to strong institutions. The kingdom envisions integrated infrastructure, economic corridors, joint defense frameworks, energy cooperation, and digital partnerships. This aligns with Saudi Arabia's broader transformation under Vision 2030. In conclusion, Saudi Arabia's concept of regional security is evolving from traditional military defense into a broader strategic framework. It combines diplomacy, deterrence, development, and international cooperation. The kingdom's message is increasingly clear. There can be no prosperity without security, and no security without stability, cooperation, and peace. Saudi Arabia today is not only defending its borders, it's actively helping shape a new regional world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Batarfi. It has been a quite valuable observations about the Saudi Arabia's approach to security in the region. Actually, you underlined what you really needed in our region, like mediation between the countries and trying to establish peaceful dialogue before any kinds of conflicts, and that's really important, especially for our region. So we are going to listen to our last speaker in the opening session, Mr. Sasan Karimi. He's from University of Tehran. Let me briefly read the bio. First, we start before. Deputy for Global Horizons Institute and Assistant Professor at Global Studies, University of Tehran. Dr. Karimi was a diplomatic advisor for the Tehran Chamber of Commerce. He is currently member of the Public Council and head of the International Policy Program Nuclear Observation Think Tank. In 2024, Dr. Karimi was served as the Strategic Vice Presidency of the President Office. His educational background focuses on origins of the challenges for the Islamic Republic of Iran. He also focuses on Iran's foreign policy during the transition period in international relations, with a focus on Iran-United States relations. Dr. Karimi has a PhD in philosophy, University of Tehran, 2020. Mr. Karimi, please.
Thank you for your introduction. Let me thank everybody, ladies and gentlemen, guests and hosts, and especially Mr. Khalil and his colleagues, along with the SETA institution here, for holding such a high level and fruitful, I hope, session here in Ankara. Maybe today my country is in the center of the maritime security studies in the world. That's why I prefer to go some steps back in history. Iranian psychology, social psychology, is more complicated that the naive Americans can understand it. This sentence is not mine. This is from Miss Lambton, a spy, a British spy, and all from the United Kingdom to Iran, and also a professor of Iranian studies at SWAS University 80 years ago, more than 80 years ago. So it is very complicated to understand what is going on in Iran from abroad, from long distance, long distant lenses, let's say. For example, during the 40 Days War, everybody, I can say even Iranians themselves, were surprised from the resilience of Iran. I mean, Iran as a land, as a political system, as a nation. This country was resilient, not today, but thousands of years. That's why Iran is the oldest permanent and continuous civilization in the world. But why Iran is such resilient? Why? A fair and just observation requires to study about it, because at least this time we saw that the conclusion of the war was based on resilience and not the military capabilities only. Definitely the military capabilities was not decisive. Otherwise, the United States was not that much desperate at the end of the war. In this war, another objective was concluded for the war, that the world is post-hegemony today, and the United States and no other actor is decisive enough and determining enough to do whatever it wants. This is one of the conclusion at the cost of Iran, but for the whole world, including the United States. Many things not happened. Regime change not happened. The collapse of state not happened. Iran's border didn't change, political borders. No one escaped from Iran, especially the political figures. No protest or unrest were happened during the war. It was no chaos, no civil war, no fluctuation of power, even when the supreme leader was killed and assassinated. No major distraction in the country was happened. And at the end, last but most importantly, no surrender was happened. So we can say that all the American manifested goals were failed. Even from an American lens, the Powell Doctrine of War, American wars. Let's review what happened. About this war, the 40 Days War that we say Ramadan War, that was initiated by Israel and the United States, but based on the whispers of Bibi Netanyahu, definitely all the objectives of doctrine of Powell were failed. It was no vital US interest, no clear goal, no decisive force that can determine everything during the war, no public backing in the public opinion of the world, inside the United States. We saw the rallies inside the United States. Among the states, inside the UN, inside even the UN Security Council, even inside among the US allies. So no public backings, no specific exit plan, a face-saving off-ramp that POTUS, the president of the United States, was desperately looking for at the end of the war. And that was why he threatened Iran from time to time to destroy the whole civilization, etc. And, no scare in Tehran. to be honest, and not a last resort. So Powell doctrine of war was totally failed in this war. But no war has any winner, to be honest. In any war, one party losses less, one party losses more. Iran also lost its little girls in Minab school. Iran lost also its leadership, its population, the people, its commanders, military commanders, and some of the infrastructures and material losses. But at the same time, this fantasy was failed that put Iran aside in the corner in this region, hit it, securitize it, push it, pressurize it, ignore it, sanction it, and the other parties make money safely, have a good life, and secure, wealthy. No, it's not possible. Not because of the will and power of Iran only, but also because of the nature of insecurity that never stop beyond the borders. Political borders are between us as human beings, but not for example, environmental phenomenon, not for the insecurity phenomenon. That's why insecurity passes the borders. You saw during the war that it was not only Iran that was insecure in this region. So, and another thing that was proved was will and power of Iran. Iran was the only player in the world after the second war, maybe, that has, or after the, let's say, at least the Cold War, that has the courage to attack American assets and people, and soldiers, easily. That's a very easy and simple decision in Tehran. And also occupied lands in Israel. So Iran takes every remedial measure when it's being threatened. In this situation, that Iran is more complicated to overcome easily, what is the solution to have a sustainable security in this region? The West Asia, Mediterranean Asia, region, and the Persian Gulf region. I say Persian because I want everybody to know what I'm talking about. And if my speech is being written in history, people can find the true name of this Gulf. So in the post-polar world order today, that no hegemony we have and no pole we have, what is the solution here? Iran's condition to reach a ceasefire during the war was to have a guarantee, a guarantee not to repeat the strikes against Iran in a better position from American and Israeli point of view. But what is the guarantee for Iran, and what is the guarantee for the other parties in this region, including the GCC countries, Turkey, Iraq, Pakistan, and other players in the region, and the whole world? I offer 3 steps for this solution. The first step of this solution is like an infrastructure for the whole solution, which is a non-aggression pact between Iran and the United States, including all the open and discussable issues, because not all the issues between these 2 countries can be discussed even from Iranian point of view or from American point of view. So there are three baskets we have. One basket that we cannot talk about from either Iranian or American point of view. One basket that the interests are aligned already, that we can cooperate about. For example, the security of Afghanistan. And the third basket is a basket that there are open issues that we are both ready to talk about them as a non-aggression pact, as a guarantee that Iran was seeking for not to repeat the strikes again in a few months or years, including the nuclear file, including other files that we can talk about, the security of the Strait of Hormuz or the Persian Gulf, that we are ready to speak about it. But the regional issues are not American issues. In this first step, in this first infrastructure, we can only talk about the international or the bilateral issues, not the regionals only. And so the second step of this solution is a kind of regional security arrangement or agreement, let's say arrangement, between Iran, the GCC countries, Iraq, Turkey, and Pakistan. And maybe with inviting major players like Russia, China, and the United States as visiting participants. It is not, for example, to not being enemies like Iran and the United States, that the first non-aggression pact is only for managing the hostility, not to, because it's not good or possible and for Iran and the United States to be friends. It's not possible. We don't talk about it. But the first step is to only moderate or manage the hostilities, the active hostilities. But the second one is to construct something, to construct the collective interests, the collective security, and cooperation. In this region, I believe that construction and development equals sustainability and survival. Otherwise, we are paying every couple of years a lot at the interest of foreigner players, not the domestic players. So it is kind of regional plus security arrangement about, again, the deterrence, military cooperation, nuclear cooperation, and security cooperations. And also, you know, Iran, as the biggest country in the West Asian part of the world, has many capabilities like the other parties. For example, nuclear capabilities, industrial capabilities, university and academic capabilities. Turkey also. GCC countries have other capabilities. They can share, they can cooperate. And the security of the Strait of Hormuz and the security of navigation in the Persian Gulf is a part of this deal, because it is a collective interest. Also for Iran, because Iran is aware of the strategic interest of the Strait of Hormuz rather than economic one. You know, Iran is more looking for strategic benefits of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is compliant to the deal between Iran and Oman in 1974 about the free passage and etc. And Iran is still compliant, but we are at the wartime now, and the remedial measures or the closing of the Strait of Hormuz is because not of Iranian ambition to make money through, but it is remedial because from the same part of the world, and same parts of the sea attacks and strikes happened against Iran's existence. That's why even according to the international law, it is possible that you take remedial measures and even preemptive measures to secure yourself. Such many parts of this second pillar, second step, are already manifested by Iran as initiatives like Hormuz, Peace Endeavor, Hope, or Mawadda, Muslim West Asian Association, Dialogue Association, or Menara, the Muslim Nuclear Consortium, the West Asian, that can happen. So this requires a more aspiration from Iran and more attention from the other parties in the region. And the third one is a UN Security Council resolution that emphasized the security in this region and built the legal infrastructure for this building. So the only loser of this solution or any other peace solution in this region is who? Is Israel. Israel will do its best to destroy this initiative or any other peace initiative in this region with whispers, with bombs, with political efforts or diplomatic or whatever, espionage. So every other player in this region or the world, the whole world, Iran, Arab friends, Turkey, Pakistan, Iraq, Egypt, the United States, even Donald Trump himself personally, China, Russia, the whole energy market take benefit from this arrangement, except Israel, that is looking very toughly for a greater Israel in future, that I promise you that after Iran will be its main ambition that will come up, and against not only Iran, but more against our Arab nations, Arab friends. So I think this is the moment, the true moment that we should discuss, we should think about the security in the region, in the sea, and in the Persian Gulf and Strait of Hormuz. I trust that Iran is also a very strong pillar of any peace dialogue and a peace initiative in this region, but should be sustainable and just. But other players are the ones who are responsible for the spoilings of this big spoiler party, or player, Israel. Let's hope for the peace in this region, and I offer here Mr. Khalil to perform the next round next year forum in Iran, maybe in Tehran, or even an island in the Persian Gulf. Thank you.
Yes, I also hope so. There will be no war, and we will have a chance to have such a session in Tehran, hopefully. And then, so we finished our opening session, but I would like to devote a couple of minutes, maybe 5 or a bit more, if there are any questions to our speakers. No question? Please.
Thank you very much. Of course, this is a very interesting meeting. I would like to ask to the Saudi colleague, the war that we've seen in the Middle East, have shown that, unfortunately, Arab words are not strong in the military sphere. As Saudi Arabia, do you think a new vision for taking this reality, and to find out a strong unity among the Arabs in order to strengthen the security matters? Thank you.
First, I can talk only about Saudi Arabia. We were able to defend our country, whether before when the Iranian missiles, plastic missiles from Yemen came over us. There were hundreds of them, and we managed to eliminate most of them, at least some 99% of them. And in this war, again, the Iranian missiles and drones, and they were attacking us. And I was there in Riyadh when we were attacked by missile during a regional conference, including Pakistan and Turkey and Azerbaijan and other 11 nations. But we managed again to eliminate most of them. So as a defense, yes, we are strong, very strong. Actually, our record is the best in the world in defending against missiles and drones, even compared to Russia, for example. But in attacking others, we have the capabilities, but we don't use them. We have ballistic missiles, we have other like 515, F-15, and many capabilities that we don't use because we believe this is a defense ministry, not a war ministry. And we believe in peace, and we don't want to be involved and be part of a war that we have been against from the beginning, and we're still against that war. We don't want to be participating with countries that we regard as enemy, like Israel, against a country that we regard as a Muslim and neighboring country like Iran. So that's why many might think that we are incapable of war. No, but we prefer peace over war. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a couple of hands going up, but we have a very limited time. Can I just have one or two questions, and please, quite short, please.
My question to His Excellency, it's a hypothetical question, a little bit. I mean, when Iran is saying that they want to, take some fees on the vessels passing Hormuz, also there was sometimes some remarks from the U.S. administration that, they could also get some of the fees. It's a hypothetical thing, but now when the international law is really less effective and there might be some new laws, do you think that there will be a time that in these waterways, though it is international ones, collection of fees for the vessels? Thank you very much.
Yes, please, Ambassador.
I can refer to the Montreal Convention. It is a special arrangement, and it is regarded as such in UNCLOS, whether we're party to it or not, that special arrangements regarding passage, regime of passage through international straits shall be maintained. And so it's talking about Montreal when it's saying that. And according to Montreal, we do not collect fees. We do collect not for passage, but for pilotage, for services rendered. But it would be probably not a good idea to look at Montreux and transport the concept to a strait like Hormuz at the moment. As far as I know, international law regarding passage through straits does not involve the collection of fees. But, of course, you know, shipping is a big business. And if voluntarily sides, all parties, enter into accords, that makes shipping easier, well, that's up to them. But as a Turkish foreign ministry official, I cannot advise for or against such a practice based on our experience.
Yes, as Ambassador emphasized, a rule of Montreux to collect fees for services. So it's not going to be a very strong, precedent for others, of course. Unfortunately, last question, please.
Thanks very much. This is Suha Çubukçuoğlu, Director of Turkey Program at Trends Research and Advisory in Abu Dhabi, UAE. And thanks to all distinguished speakers and to Ambassador Burak Özügergen, whom I met fortunately during his time as the ambassador in Athens. My question is to you, Mr. Ambassador. We heard from media reports that Turkey is preparing to pass a bill also dubbed as the Blue Homeland Act in the parliament. And part of it is designed to provide the authority to the president to declare special maritime zones. Could you please briefly highlight what it means? What does a special maritime zone mean? Thank you.
Yes, Ambassador, please.
There's always we need to make a distinction between what is real and what you read in the papers. Affectionately, this bill is called Blue Homeland legislation. The way we formulated it is called Deniz Yetki Alanları Taslağı, Maritime Jurisdiction Zones draft. So one is an ideology, one is legislation. I'm not saying that they're incompatible, but you need to take a look, you need to realize where you started from. And that is, I cannot go into details, not because it's secret, but because in the coming weeks or months, depending on the will of the parliament, our members of parliament are going to debate the text. So it would be presumptuous of a government appointed official to predict what the will of the parliament will end up being. But I can say why this was needed. We're not a party to UNCLOS, right? The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, 82. We're not a party to it. The Aegean Sea is a whole different ball game. We can talk about that in another session. But because of the shortcomings of UNCLOS, especially regarding the regime of islands and et cetera, 333 and 133 article, or 121 rather, we could not become a party to it because you either are a party to it in total or not, because you cannot put reservations, place reservations on it. Okay, so, But UNCLOS contains so much information, so much guidance on governments and industry and other stakeholders. It's important. We have not trashed it. We do implement parts of UNCLOS that we consider as having become or having codified customary international law. So the way that our legislation regarding maritime jurisdiction affairs, who does what, who can do what here and there, is really a patchwork. You know, from the 80s, you have Karasuları Kanunu, which is the law regarding territorial sea. We have made arrangements with the Soviet Union when it was called as such back in the 70s, also in the 80s after the fall of the wall, etc. And it's all over the place. So we decided that we needed a unified domestic UNCLOS. And that's what we're trying to do. So this piece of legislation, it's a big one. It's very important to know that we're not establishing new zones by it. We're not extending any existing zones. In fact, we're not even drawing lines anywhere in the sea. There is no map attached to it. So there's nothing to worry about regarding an exercise aimed at codifying a patchwork of things having to do, legislation having to do with the maritime space.
Okay, thank you very much, Ambassador. If there are any more questions, please just keep them for the next session, maybe the session after the next session. And thank you very much for all our distinguished speakers, and thank you for listening. And we are going to have a break, and then we will see you in the first session. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to thank all bodies and institutions organizing this activity. And secondly, I would like to thank our participants to dedicate their time. And just to inform you that Professor Giray will be a bit late because he was in a jury in the university. Currently, I believe he's driving something, but and in a rush, but he will be here in a couple of minutes. I don't think so. I don't think so. Let's see. Okay, this session is dedicated to a topic that really have a prominence in the current agenda towards a regional council on maritime risks, including CBRN threats. Especially for the ones who do not know the backgrounds, I'm a former military, a retired colonel, served in the army, and CBRN is a magic word for most militaries because usually either military or civilian establishments are not ready to respond it. In terms of equipment, in terms of institutionalization, in terms of any civilian preparedness. And another issue is about maritime risk. And believe in me, now we see a verge of maritime risks and nuclear threats, not only limited by Iranian-American escalation, but Russian nuclear war, because even the officials in Moscow were circulating the idea that they can use tactical nuclear missiles, etc., if their existential threat perceptions are somehow provoked. So, under this theme, I believe that there will be a very rich discussion, and all of the speakers are well prepared. First, I want to give floor to Professor Knut or Knut, I don't know. Knut, okay. Let me introduce, first of all, Professor is a professor of law at the University of Bergen, Faculty of Law, and he is focusing on public international law of the sea, the law of armed conflict with particular emphasis on maritime operations and constitutional law. Well, the first thing that I teach to my universities in a class, which is about law, I tell the difference between law and law because usually the Turks pronounce law with love. so now the floor is yours, sir. Go ahead, please.
Thank you so much. Allow me first of all to thank the organizers for their work in convening this meeting and for the fact that we are able to meet in the times when international cooperation is being tested well beyond what many thought we'd be able to bear. I am, as last time we met, hesitant to suggest that I can offer much by way of solutions. Thank you. To issues that require a deep regional familiarity. But what I can offer is some Norwegian experiences in managing maritime risks, including regarding CBRN issues in a geopolitically tense environment. I'd like to start by taking you back to 1989. In security terms, the Nordic region was experiencing a cautious tour. The Soviet Union was pursuing a policy of perestroika and glasnost, and yet the waters north of Norway remain very security important for the Russians and the Soviet Union at the time, as its northern fleet is based out of the peninsula of Murmansk, and the submarines there are fundamental to a credible second strike capacity for the Russians. So on the 7th of April of 1989, the Kosomolets, which was a new type of nuclear-powered submarine, were conducting operations near Bear Island. They experienced a fire, a high-pressure air hose burst, essentially then creating a blowtorch inside the hull of the submarine. The crew succeeded in bringing the submarine to the surface. However, the aft lost buoyancy, the submarine sank to a depth of 1,680 meters and 42 hands were lost. The submarine was powered by a VM5 pressurized water reactor, and water measurements around the wreck now confirm the release of caesium-137 and strontium-90. The reactor's internal barriers are most likely now failing, meaning that nuclear fuel is corroding into the ocean. The submarine is also reported to have been carrying 2 Schwackel torpedoes equipped with nuclear warheads containing plutonium-239. Special polymers have been applied to the torpedo room of the submarine to prevent leakage, and sediment samples from around the submarine suggest that these polymers are holding for now. So we're at a time when we have 2 adversarial states. We have no agreed framework. We have no precedent. And yet, within a few years, Norway and Russia had established joint environmental monitoring of a nuclear hazard in a contested maritime space. This did not work because the Cold War had ended. The cooperation preceded that. Nor because the politics were easy, they were not. It worked because both sides could see what they stood to lose. The reactor was not going to respect maritime boundaries, the cost of non-cooperation was visible, shared, and the asymmetry was in no one's favor. And I think this is one of the first conditions of maritime risk cooperation. The threat must be legible as a shared problem. Now, very different is the cooperation surrounding the joint Norwegian-Russian Fisheries Commission. The commission was established in 1975 at the height of the Cold War, and it was created as a bilateral forum for managing shared stocks in the Barents Sea, primarily cod and haddock. Now, compared to the Red Sea, you will all recognize that this is a low-stake resource, but it is still in high-stakes waters. The Commission's creation rested on a rather straightforward calculation. Both states were drawing from the same resource, and without coordination, they stood to lose. This technical cooperation has functioned, and it has continued to function through successive crises. And it has done so, I think, for 3 interconnected reasons. First, the Commission has been insulated from political relations at the highest level. It's staffed by technical experts and fishery officials who meet regularly, and they do so regardless of political conditions. Second, the mandate of the Commission is deliberately narrow. They talk about fish stocks, they talk about quotas, they talk about enforcement. They don't try to do more, and of course, there is a cost for both states to this cooperation not functioning. That is not to say that it has been without friction. In October 2005, the Norwegian Coast Guard inspectors boarded a Russian trawler of Electron, who you have unfortunately missed the picture of behind here. The trawler was detected in serious fishery violations. The Coast Guard decided to arrest the vessel and bring it to Tromsø, but the Russian captain instead decided to take the vessel to a Russian port, bringing with them the 2 Norwegian fishery inspectors. This is an incident that had all the characteristics of something that could become a serious crisis. Voices in Russia called for the Northern Fleet to intervene. What kept it contained was back-channel military-to-military contact, continuous diplomatic engagement, and critically, the fact that both sides ultimately had more to lose from escalation than from resolution. It's also possible that bad weather and flying conditions had something to do with it. After February 2022, with the full-scale invasion of the Ukraine, the Commission entered what we might call a reduced but surviving form. Norway has suspended all high-level political contact with Russia across most domains. The Commission has continued to function at a technical level, but with reduced engagement. What the Commission demonstrates, I think, that could have any value for you is that it's built on a genuine symmetry of exposure. It's kept institutionally narrow and insulated from political temperature, and it can then survive much longer than what we might expect. The Commission's resilience rests on a design choice that was made very early, and it's been held consistently. It's kept technical and insulated from the political. Fisheries officials continue to meet when politicians do not. Now, that insulation is not automatic. It required both sides to resist using a functional technical body as leverage in a political tense time. The lesson I'm trying to draw is not that depoliticization always works. it is that the insulation has to be built in before you need it. You have to do it in peacetime, and you have to do it when you don't see the need for it, because nobody wants to build that insulation in a crisis. Now, turning to the legal framework, and I'll try to do this somewhat more briefly. The Fishery Commission rests on existing legal framework. The Law of the Sea Convention's provisions on shared stock was largely known at the time that the Commission came into existence, and later treaty law has been easily incorporated. The consulates of cooperation, by contrast, operated on a much lighter legal basis, and I think that shows another point. The wider the scope of the cooperation envisaged, the greater the need for a legal architecture to sustain it. We have, if we go to the most specific of the issues mentioned for this panel, the CBRN risks, the most directly relevant instrument is the 2005 SUA Convention regime, which for participating states added CBRN measures to the 1988 regime. The core provision is Article 3 bis. It criminalizes, or it requires the criminalization of using a ship as a weapon, discharging a BCN weapon, or transporting BCA weapons or materials by sea. But it is noteworthy in this regard that it requires there to be essentially a terrorist intent in doing so. Lacking that terrorist intent, then any transport or use or CBRN falls outside the scope of the convention, and that might be very well reasoned in the current environment. Article 2 bis also excludes activity of military forces to the extent that they're governed by other rules of international law. And again, this is a limitation that matters. Many of the threats we might envisage comes from, by this falls outside the scope of the protocol. There is also a provision on boarding in Article 8 bis. It works well among cooperating states. It depends on bilateral relationships and standing authorization, and it provides little traction where cooperation is absent. So you need to build cooperation for the system to work. So SUA addresses a real but narrow slice of the risks, and outside that band, if it is state conduct, if the purpose is ambiguous, for non-ratifying states, for uncooperative flag states, the conventions provide a very limited traction. A regional council could therefore choose to expand on these rules or to use the existing scope strategically. I would there point to that for the 1988 convention, the participation in the region is broad. However, when we turn to the 2005 convention and protocol, that there is only participation by Djibouti, Iraq, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, meaning that there is an uneven legal foundation, and that may be a core challenge for any council seeking to operate in this state. Now, you're all getting very bored of me trying to draw this to a close. I would suggest for you that much of the legal framework exists, and the institutional models are imperfect, they're stressed, but they're real, and examples can be drawn. What the Norwegian experience cannot supply you is an answer to the primary question: what would need to be true for the relevant parties in this region to see maritime risk cooperation as being in their interest? In the Barents Sea, the answer was a sinking nuclear submarine and shared fishery resources. The Red Sea has its own versions. Environmental and CBRN risks are real, they're shared, and they do not respect political boundaries. But if that is sufficient to motivate cooperation is something you all are much better placed to answer than I am. The Norwegian experience does, however, suggest one thing, that when the political moment arrives, it helps if the legal and institutional architecture is already in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Very enlightening, I should confess. And now let's visit the ideas of Professor Gavdat Bahkat. He's a distinguished professor at the National Defense University in Washington, D.C., with 11 books and a lot of articles. Also, I checked your op-eds in the net, really fascinating in terms of ideas and perspectives. And he studies proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, energy transition, political economy, and American foreign policy. So, Professor, once you visit all these facts, you focus on CBRN, especially by the non-state actors' usage or probable usages, and also maritime risks. And I remember my 30s, you know, there was a great discussion, especially in the US literature, that there may be an attack on the United States by means of a ship or vessel that's uploaded by a nuclear warhead and would explode across the coast of New York, etc. I mean, it was a worst case scenario at that time. So what's your idea? And please, floor is yours.
Thank you. And I will talk about non-state actors. In the United States, usually they call them terrorist organizations, but I believe it's better to call them non-state actors because it is controversial if one organization is terrorist or not. But for a long time, there has been debate about if non-state actors can have chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons. In the Middle East, this has never happened, and I believe will never happen. In Lebanon, Hezbollah, in Gaza, Hamas, both of them face existential war. And if there is any time to use WMD capabilities, this is the right time. This has not happened. This means that these non-state actors do not have WMD capabilities. This is not guarantee for the future, but what is concerned about the future, smuggling these materials. And this takes us to maritime security in Strait of Hormuz and Bab el-Mandab. The experience shows us that when there is failed state or failing state, there is a good chance for instability, for smuggling. The experience in Libya, in Syria, in Iraq is very concerned. And one last thing about non-state actors, my understanding, they cannot be defeated. From American perspective, when United States started the war in Afghanistan, 2001, nobody ever thought that today the Taliban will be in power. United States, the strongest military power in the world, has not been able to defeat the Taliban. Al-Houthi in Yemen, they have been bombed by United States, by Britain, by Israel, and they are still in control. They have not been defeated. Hezbollah and Hamas, they have been beaten, but they are still standing. So as political scientist, I believe non-state actors cannot be defeated. For instability for states, it is very concerned when state authority is weakened. In the war with Iran, United States and Israel entertained the idea of supporting the Kurds, basically dismantling Iran. And it looks President Trump changed his mind, maybe pressure from Turkey, Pakistan, other countries. He came to the conclusion that this is a bad idea. And comparing Strait of Hormuz and Bab el-Mandab, Bab el-Mandab is shared by Yemen on one side, Eritrea and Djibouti on the other side. I'm not expert on Africa or Horn of Africa, but I know Eritrea and Djibouti are very poor countries and to some extent do not enjoy a lot of political stability. With the war in Sudan, Ethiopia, Somaliland. So there is so much going on in the Horn of Africa. In Yemen, since 2015, the war, Yemen also unstable. So state of Bab el-Mandab faces a lot of challenges. And I will come to this later about the future in Bab el-Mandab and Strait of Hormuz. For Strait of Hormuz, my main argument here is stable, prosper Iran is not only good for the Iranian people, it is good for the entire Middle East, good for our host country here, Turkey. Turkey and Iran share long borders. If Iran becomes unstable, refugees, immigrants from Iran, gas export from Iran to Turkey, Iran, nation of 92 million people, is very important. Same thing for Gulf states. And this is why, like our Saudi colleague talked about how Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states lobbied Trump administration against the war. It is in the best interest of Gulf states to have stable, prosper Iran. This is probably, given the time, the two main conclusions I have. The first one I talked about, stable and prosper Iran. Regardless of any government in Tehran, Iran is major regional power. And about Strait of Hormuz, geography favors Iran. With about 1,000 miles and asymmetric capability, Iran can stop navigation in the Gulf, in the Strait of Hormuz. In my mind, it's like insurance, car insurance. Just one small accident can raise your insurance. One drone attack, one short missile attack can raise insurance in the strait. The second point, kind of the future. Usually people talk about either the strait will be open or closed. I don't share this. I don't believe it is either or. It is not black or white. I believe the future of Bab el-Mandab and Strait of Hormuz will be different from what it used to be. Since the war in Gaza, navigation in Bab el-Mandab is not back to normal. I don't believe it will ever be back to pre-2023 war in Gaza. Al-Houthi tested interrupting free navigation, and this will be with us. The same thing in Strait of Hormuz. Former Russian president said Iran tested its nuclear weapons. It is called Strait of Hormuz. The negotiation between Iran and the United States might lead to opening the strait, but the threat and the leverage will always be there. So again, I believe going back will not happen. The future still unknown and probably will be unknown for many years. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Now, Ms. Serayne, right? Eldeda from Switzerland, from GCSP that I follow closely, especially the products, and we discussed it. She's a project manager for the Mediation and Peace Support Department, and also involved in dialogue processes like Track 1, Track 2, and also a project maker regarding fragile and conflict-affected settings, focusing on Middle East, North Africa, and Eurasia, and also committed to humanitarian operations and advocacy groups. So with this background, for sure, there's an enriched perspective of you, and you will present, I believe, modalities for risk reduction in the maritime domain. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good day, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I would like to thank first Dr. Khalil and also SETA for hosting us. You know, the first thing I think some of you might be thinking is Switzerland is a landlocked country, so what are we doing at this conference? But we heard during the introductory remarks of His Excellency Mr. Özgürgin that, of course, even for landlocked countries, maritime security is crucial. But I'm also not an academic, I'm a practitioner. And I'm a practitioner of Track 1.5 and Track 2 dialogues that focus on this region. And so, you know, what we try to do is come up with creative policy options and scenarios and ideas that can diffuse tensions or unstick sticking points. So it's based on this that I would like to share some thoughts today. I want to talk mainly about the geopolitical angle and talking about the large player escalation risk and the prevention mechanisms that could help reduce the risks of escalation, further escalation in the region internally, but also between large players, which of course goes hand in hand with CBRN risks, but also just more generally the security of the region and globally. So, you know, we've seen how maritime and energy insecurity can impose disproportionate economic and political costs without delivering strategic gains. And this moment, despite its difficulty, presents an opportunity for the region and for large players. And, you know, two notable players that we have in mind, of course, are the US and China, who are having a summit today and tomorrow. So we will see what might or might not come out of that. So I'm taking a risk also, putting some policy ideas out there that could end up being completely disproven following the outcomes of the next 2 days. But this is also why we are nimble strategic thinkers. We have to keep adapting to the situation and the context as it evolves. And, you know, we think that, you know, these kinds of approaches of large players, you know, coming in to support regional-led initiatives can help to pursue the same interests and objectives in the region and to move away from zero-sum rivalries. So the protection of critical waterways, of energy markets, of insurance mechanisms and supply chains is in all these players' interests. And we've seen, of course, in the Strait of Hormuz and also Bab el-Mandab, that inaction, when there is a disruption, is very costly. So this is one side of the coin, but the other side of the coin is also that neither the US nor China nor other large players have a particularly large interest in the moment of assuming expanded security commitments or becoming entangled in regional rivalries. So how do we deal with this? I will float a few potential scenarios now that you know, could have some region-led, but also large player coordinated and supported mechanisms on maritime and energy security, including risk reduction mechanisms and areas for technical cooperation. Scenario one that I want to talk about is that large players could serve as supporting stakeholders of a Red Sea and Gulf of Oman-led maritime security community that would focus on dialogue, coordination, and risk reduction mechanisms rather than collective defense or alliance building. Fundamental aspects of this initiative would include that there not be any touching of questions of sovereignty, or forced posture or alliance politics, that there be regular consultations among coastal states on maritime risks and incidents, crisis communication channels be established and incident prevention mechanisms as well. That there be shared understandings on the protection of commercial shipping, and that there be a gradual development towards regional maritime code of conduct. And my co-panelist mentioned, of course, it's difficult to establish such things in times that are not peaceful. But perhaps I would float the idea that sometimes necessity makes it so that we have to find a way. Of course, ideal though being the extremely insightful example that you shared. The second scenario that I wish to bring up here is that regional actors could also facilitate selectively reviving and reinvigorating and adapting long expired bilateral maritime confidence building mechanisms to the Red Sea and Gulf of Oman contexts, focusing on practical deconfliction and communication tools that reduce the risk of unintended incidents involving assets of various countries that are operating in the proximity. And important to note in this scenario would be that there be still complementary aspects to that the entire initiative actually be complementary to regional coastal state-led arrangements and could include operational communication channels between relevant naval and coast guard authorities, incident at sea and air deconfliction procedures, and technical exchanges focused on non-traditional maritime threats, for instance, piracy, smuggling, and safety of navigation. The third scenario would be that there be a civilian and technical cooperation that strengthens regional capacity and resilience, focusing on delivering tangible public goods that benefit coastal states, commercial actors, and global supply chains. And that this should include, in order to be successful, maritime domain awareness and early warning support, port security, cyber resilience, and protection of navigation systems, data sharing, forecasting, and emergency response capabilities. And final scenario I want to mention, and I imagine you're already sick of hearing me, so I will wrap it up after that, is that there should also be an energy security dialogue linked to maritime stability. We heard in the opening remarks of His Excellency the Norwegian Ambassador that politics and political strategy as well as dialogue are crucial aspects of maritime security. This needs to be combined with the technical cooperation. So this option would connect maritime stability directly to shared economic interests, particularly those of Gulf producers, transit states, and major energy consumers. And the emphasis would be on coordination rather than market intervention. And this could include, for instance, information exchange on choke point risks and supply disruptions, crisis communications mechanisms and crisis coordination mechanisms related to energy transport, and engagement with key producing and transit states. Now, these are all ideas that can be floated, but that of course would need leadership, particularly coming from the region. And I think that this is an important point I'd like to finish on and stress that these mechanisms require not only regional ownership, but really leadership, and that they only be supported by large players for them to have a reinforcement mechanism. But if there is no leadership and ownership coming from the region, then the ability for these options to be successful is quite limited. I'll leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And our final speaker, Professor Giray Sadık. He's the head of International Relations Department at Yıldırım Beyazıt University, Ankara Yıldırım Beyazıt University. And he's focusing on two different fields. First, from the PhD, American Foreign Policy, and then European Studies. And now he will present us exploring venues for maritime security cooperation from Red Sea to the Mediterranean. The floor is yours, Professor.
Thank you, Chairman, Hocam, and thank you for the organization. And my apologies for being late. I was out of a board meeting, so that's the thing. I am double-hatted. That is one of my hats as department chair. I am also director of European Studies Research Center at Ankara Yıldırım Beyazıt University. Maritime security is in line with my research and some concrete contributions of Türkiye to that is also Türkiye hosts NATO Maritime Security Center of Excellence, which is in Istanbul, that I was there last week as well for another event. That is important, and I'm glad I was able to catch up with the final presentation totally, which is most in line with my research, and therefore my talk will provide a tour de force or outreach for policy options. So it nicely follows with that. In a sense, the core idea is security, connectivity, and resilience are interconnected, which you also touched upon. And they are interconnected in a sense of building blocks. Without having security, you don't have sustainable connectivity. And without having sustainable working connectivity, you are not resilient against other traditional and non-traditional state and non-state threats. By the way, we are talking about hybrid landscape, which I also have a book on that. And when you said non-traditional maritime security challenges, I think after Ukraine, more recently after Gaza, and most recently after Iran, what is left traditional, for God's sake? So we are all in that kind of untraditional hybrid fashion that is of growing more and more gray zone. So let alone big powers facilitating the state actors and so on, we are living in an era of where great powers using proxy actors and regional actors empower their proxies as a way of warfare. So that has become almost not an exception or outlier, but pretty much how new wars are fought. Again, I am not celebrating that, so I'm not happy by challenging you on that front. I wish it would be closer to your scenarios, but that's the region we are living in. And there are few signs emerging that to help us to be more optimistic. So this will be my first core and perhaps last big question. If you see any signs of having it for us to be more optimistic, please share with us or we can talk on that. Just that I cannot see in the short term, let's say the short term at least, but in the long term, inshallah, it may emerge. So a few thoughts on that. One step in the right direction, however, with limited results. Still, I think it needs to be mentioned in a positive sense, in search of hope or seeing the light end of the tunnel, would be Türkiye working with mediation efforts in Iran and broadly speaking in the region. That's why when we were talking with the professor about the title, I thought linking the maritime security from Red Sea to the Mediterranean, because nowadays everything is interlinked. So we have connectivity in terms of trade, energy security, maritime security, but also across issues, domains, and actors. And therefore, with maritime security term, we are all on the same boat. Either we are all secure or we all share that insecurity one way or another. It's globalization of insecurity. In some part of the region, it can be burning ships. In another part, it can be higher oil prices. In another part, it can be depletion of rare earth minerals and lack of technology components. That's why rather than energy security, I prefer to name it as supply chain security, which includes food, rare earth minerals, and anything you can imagine that is transported. And in that vein, Turkish mediation efforts should be viewed not as just passive mediation or as a third-party mediation, which Switzerland may have an upper hand with experience and regarded as impartial. But Türkiye does have an upper hand of having geopolitically important position. So Türkiye does have something at stake. And as a country with deep historical ties to region, it can act as mediator in some of those conflicts. So Türkiye does have something at stake. So for Türkiye, it's not just an international good offices and mediation, but it's a way of modus vivendi, surviving this conflictual state with minimum damage to its economy and security, and at the same time with possible maximum contribution to regional security, including maritime security.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Now, it's time for Q&A session. I wonder if any is interested in asking a question or any comment, which should be a bit shorter, by the way.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Microphone.
My question is for Cevdet. You talk about a possibility of weapons of mass destructions to be used by non-state actors. As you say, there is a existential war on behalf of them because there are huge attacks carried out on Hezbollah and many other groups. So far, there was no use of such weapons of mass destruction. But you say that there is a possibility of, hijacking these kind of weapons, if I understood correctly. Do you believe that still there is such a threat? I mean, of course, for our security in this region, the major threat is that some countries like Israel is attacking on these groups, but the result is not really desired. Still, there are such groups, and it seems like the war between states and non-states are increasing rather than decreasing. Do you think that this threat of use of weapons of mass destruction still exists in our region, and why?
I believe there is exaggeration of the fear of WMD, especially nuclear weapons, maybe because nuclear weapons are very destructive. But I am in the minority. I believe nuclear weapons lost their value. It is very hard to imagine any scenario under which nuclear weapons can be used in the 21st century. We are very far away from 1945. And nuclear weapons do not bring security. In 1973, Israel was attacked. And at that time, Israel had nuclear weapons. The war between Ukraine and Russia, Ukraine does attack Russia, and Russia has nuclear weapons. United States lost the war in Vietnam, and US is nuclear weapon state. So I believe there is a change in the nature of warfare. United States is very concerned about nuclear capability in Iran. Iran, in my opinion, does not care about nuclear weapons. Iran developed asymmetric capabilities, drones, missiles, small boats. So I believe we should go beyond nuclear and WMD capability. The nature of modern warfare has changed. Even United States, like in US, who are proud, we learned from Iran. We are copying Shahed 136. United States finally decided not to produce expensive, complicated drones and reverse engineering Al-Shahed. The last point I want to make, because these non-state actors in United States and Europe, we usually call them Iran's proxies. I believe this is the wrong term. Hezbollah does not take orders from Iran. Hamas does not. There is coordination, but these groups, they are in response to national issues. Hezbollah is fighting for Lebanon, Hamas is fighting for Gaza. There is coordination with Iran, but I believe the term proxies is the wrong one. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Any question? Please, sir.
I have a question for Professor Scodvin. So concerning the situation of your seas, have you an agreement to avoid incidents with the Russian Navy, an INCSEA agreement, and more? Do you think that an INCSEA agreement model, since it's a confidence building measures, naval confidence building, will be useful in the Strait of Hormuz? An agreement between the U.S. Navy, other Western, all the other navies.
So during the Cold War, the US and the Soviet Union developed the Incidents at Sea agreements, and then that functioned as a model agreement by large for other states. So Norway has a separate Incidents at Sea agreement with Russia. When I participate in training our naval officers, that agreement is sort of a core part of their training, because it's something they very, very strictly adhere to, and they're very conscious about it. And the funny thing when you give naval officers a legal agreement is that they don't really care about what is in it. They care about object and purpose. And that is the same on the Russian side. So because you have the agreement, it doesn't really matter so much what says in the agreement. It matters to them that you have the agreement and that they've sort of ingrained this learning that we are going to avoid incidents at sea. So yes, the Incidents at Sea agreement has been a very powerful tool, I think. And according to the officers who sail in these waters, it is something that when they meet Russian ships, it's at the forefront of their mind, and they can see in how the Russian ships are behaving that they too are very conscious about it. And I can't remember the year, but the agreement was recently updated. So it is a living instrument.
And concerning Hormuz?
Certainly, but certainly you could conceive of something like that. But what part of the problem is we have a lot of space. Hormuz doesn't. So and that the space gives you time to move apart. It gives you need less readiness because it gives you a little bit of time to react when something happens. The most dangerous thing a naval ship does. The Americans sailed their biggest hangar ship into the Oslo fjord a little while ago. I don't know what they were thinking. It's the most dangerous place they could be. In the middle of the Atlantic, they're safe. They can do their bubbles. When you sail them into a fjord or into the Strait of Hormuz, it's really, really dangerous because your time to react is so short. So maybe, but certainly as a confidence building thing, more than really as something that will add legal value. But to sit down and negotiate an agreement and put paper and pens on it, that has value in and of itself, even though it legally might not offer that much.
Thank you, Professor. Any other, one final question?
Thank you so much. I would like to thank all four speakers. My question goes for Mrs. Eldada. I would like to know, in your opinion, what types of modalities currently have the greatest practical impact on maritime risk reduction? Is that technological surveillance technologies, or legal regulatory frameworks, or political regional cooperative mechanisms? And maybe a bit more elaboration on, how do you see AI and autonomous shipping systems or unmanned vessels, their role in maritime risk reduction? Is that an emerging phenomenon that needs time in order to its efficiency to be proven, or it is already under operation?
Thank you very much. My short response to your first part of your question would be, in my view, it's a mix of all of those things. These things really are interconnected, and they are each bringing their piece of what is making maritime security possible and functional, or ideally would. The very short answer to the second part of your question is, I think, as with the rollout of any emerging technology, there's usually a period of trial and error. There are usually, moments where when, for example, autonomous, vessels are rolled out, much like we saw with autonomous vehicles on the streets, you see where it's a strong, improvement. You see where there are also risks that need to be managed and adjusted and adapted for. So, so to elaborate a bit on that last part, I think technology is moving more quickly than policy. And so we are in a situation now where, there is going to be a lot of ad hoc in terms of figuring out how to make policy and governance catch up to the technologies, emerging technologies, and the artificial intelligence that is rolled out, even in the maritime sphere. To elaborate a little bit on the first part of your question, this is also something that we try to do in our dialogues, is to have different sectors and different types of experts, practitioners, and policymakers come to the table together, because precisely these different elements that you have mentioned in your question often operate in silos, and they sort of operate separately from one another. But if there is at least a minimum of coordination, that's when you have a more holistic, overarching possibility to have architectures and risk prevention mechanisms that cover all bases. And I certainly would not wish to give the impression that diplomatic dialogue has this naive approach that everyone will simply work together because peace is good, war is bad. No, absolutely. This is, it would be wonderful if the world worked that way. But indeed, this is not the world in which we live. This is not the reality. I just should elaborate quickly that, the fundamental premise on which my points are based are that there is a critical window of opportunity right now where there are overlapping interests for large actors to precisely for economic reasons and for security reasons, if not directly cooperate, at least act in parallel of one another to ensure that the maritime spheres in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Oman, or we've heard all the terms being used today. So the Persian Gulf, the Arabian Gulf, the Islamic Gulf, being functional. So I would just say that in that sense, if we look at the different pieces of the puzzle that are coming together, if we harness the political interests, the economic interests, the technical cooperations of the practitioners and the technical experts on the ground, and we try to have formats and platforms where these all can coordinate and share experiences and perspectives. This sounds very idealistic, but actually it can become extremely technical and lead to better informed decision making on all those fronts.
Thank you so much. As concluding remarks, I see that there must be a multi-layered approach to balance security and prosperity of not only the state, but also communities. And in this sense, balancing is a question mark in here, because all do have expectations from the developments, and we have a huge gap between confrontation, competition, and cooperation. So just my poor idea, why not to have an international conference that states and non-state actors come together and discuss what to do in Hormuz, Gulf region, like what we did for the Turkish Straits, Bosphorus or Dardanelles. And today there's no problem after Montreux. So I think there might be some sort of resolutions after such an international conference, because the Gulf is more than Iran, and think that Hormuz is a very strict strait that 25 miles divided in two and cannot be nationalized purely to prevent the passages. So that's a proposal. Thank you so much for patience, and let me conclude the panel right now. Thank you. And lunchtime, right? Yes.